What if the quirks you've been hiding are actually the key to building a brand that stands out? In this episode, I talked to my amazing friend, Bridget Baker, a former ballet dancer turned branding expert and web designer. She's here to show us how embracing your story can transform your business. We'll talk about owning what makes you different, redefining your worth, and building a brand that feels true to you. If you've ever felt stuck trying to fit into the mold that doesn't fit, this episode is your chance to break free and shine. Now on to the episode. Welcome to another episode of the Standout Creatives. Today I have on Bridget Baker, and she works with coaches, consultants, therapists, organizers, and a lot of other different people creating their websites and helping them with their branding. She gives you the permission you need to brand your business the way that you want to. Bridget, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, so I did not, leave the corporate 9 to 5 hustle. I was not one of those people. Left a big branding agency. I started out in a creative profession. I was a professional ballet dancer and choreographer, and tried to find my way in what I wanted to do for years. That led me to journalism school, writing. That wasn't quite it. Played around with some other things for years, and then eventually got into web design. And now I'm realizing full circle, basically, that branding and web design together, I'm essentially helping people craft and choreograph their businesses online.
Cool. Can you talk a little bit how you got into the ballet? That's very interesting.
Yeah, I was 5 when I started, and my parents didn't force me. I actually begged them. They were like, "No, this is something people make you do." And I'm like, "No, no, no, I really want to." And it took a couple years, I guess, of convincing really to get into it. And then you're at a young age, you are sort of very serious into your pursuit of it as a career, because it doesn't have longevity. At 25 years old, you're a has-been. So it's a very short career. And so luckily I was privileged enough that my parents could put me in ballet schools and all those things. And but really my passion was really for choreographing, because the kind of choreographing I was doing like contemporary choreography, and I liked bringing out the uniqueness in people. As a classically trained ballet dancer, it's very much about looking like everyone else, symmetry, you have to be in unison, all those kinds of things. And I loved the moments where I didn't have to do that. So as a dancer, where I could just be a soloist and dance by myself. And so what I like to do as a choreographer was lean on people's unique skills and assets and really draw that out. So kind of the underdog people that maybe weren't getting noticed, I would go, "Ooh, wow, that person can do a cartwheel. Let's put the cartwheel in there." Or that person's really good at jumping, or that person's really good at turning or something. And so I would really just bring out their assets. And kind of that led me to quitting dancing at some point, because I was like, yeah, I want to really work with people's individuality and work one-on-one with people more.
What When did you make the transition from dancer to choreographer? Was it something that you always thought you could do, or
I
was it
was
something
young
that
when I became
gradually
a
over
choreographer.
time?
I was like 12 or 13, and I won some competitions and things like that. So I really, yeah, early teenagehood, I already started choreographing. I would hear music and immediately start choreographing things in my head. I would, see a movie, and then I would go, "Ooh, I need the soundtrack to the movie so I can choreograph to that," and things like that. Definitely was like music was a huge part of it for me. And especially, it's interesting now that I think about this, you're actually having me think about something I hadn't even ever thought about: electronic music. I'm 52 now. So as a teenager in the 80s, listening to early electronic music, like that's what I wanted to choreograph to, which was sort of different and unique. No one was really doing that. I wasn't doing, choreographing to all classical music necessarily. And that's kind of what the lane that I went down on, was sort of this minimalist electronic style.
What made you decide to do web design and branding? Because I know you said you did a lot of different
It's
things
a
in
huge pivot.
between, but
Yeah. I did a lot of different things in between. It started out, so kind of the why I work with some of the people I work with as well, and the types of work I like to do. Like I said, I mentioned in college. So when I stopped dancing, I went to college and became a journalism student. I was actually going to be a dance critic, and decided not to go that route. But in journalism school, this was again like, I don't know, barely even 2000. So There was no social media, things were a little different, and the thing that started intriguing me the most was, like, the newsletter laying out class and the formatting classes and things like that. I loved making the visual elements, and I realized, "Oh, this, like, ties everything in that I love to do." So kind of combining writing with visual elements, and then fast forward years later, and I had tried all kinds of different jobs figuring out what I wanted to do with my life, and I just had actually I was designing jewelry, so this is a whole nother thing. I was designing jewelry and I had someone do my website, and it was like an early HTML thing, and he really didn't want to do websites anymore. He was a photographer, he was very talented. I was very fortunate to work with him to taking photographs of my jewelry, but he like didn't want to do it anymore, so he couldn't edit something. And so I waited like 6 months to get like a one sentence edited or something, and I thought,
Oh
you know
wow.
what, I'm going to start learning websites because I don't want to be in that position. And as I was doing it, I thought, I don't want anyone else to be in this position either. I want to make this easy and accessible for
Hmm.
people. So I started working with coaches and consultants primarily. My mom is a master certified coach, so I started kind of helping her and her clients, and that led me into just I had an affinity for it and a love for doing it, and it was made me realize I could do design and also think about being able to live anywhere, work from anywhere, have my own schedule. All those kinds of things really appealed to me versus an office job. And so hence I started building websites, and kind of the rest is history. So I'm self-taught, completely self-taught.
Oh, so you were around before WordPress and all that jazz.
Yeah, I started into WordPress. That was kind of the beginning foray. Yeah, every other weird builder that existed before that. Yeah, so I'm a new Squarespace convert. Really, in the past few years, I've leaned into Squarespace as well.
One of the things that you mentioned when you started off was that your mother was your connection into the world. What do you think the importance of having people within your network to help you? How much does that impact your business?
I think that's highly important. Yeah, I knew I had a skill, but I didn't know how to get clients. I mean, the same thing. Most of the time, you go to college and they don't teach you how to do business unless you go to business school, right? It's like, here's your craft. You're good at your craft, but they don't teach you how to. Luckily, I'm extroverted, so I connect with people well. And it started kind of building on having conversations around that. And people would ask me, friends would ask me to do their websites, things like that. Really, it's become over time, even that versus friends asking me to do websites, the people I do websites for become my friends in a way. So it's
Mm.
kind of worked the opposite way. But yeah, everything, my whole business is referral based. Like I call it magic sometimes. Sometimes I don't even know how it works, but magically I'll open my inbox and, hey, I thought of you, and do you want to work with this client? Hey, I have a client. I tend to like collaborate with copywriters and coaches and other people that are working maybe on the client's projects. So sometimes I just step in and do the website where they've maybe done some of the deeper work. Other times someone refers me and I do the deeper work of branding and website and everything from the ground up. But yeah, my business is pretty much all referral based.
When did you realize that branding was going to be an important element of helping people build their websites?
Really, I'd say about 5 years ago, because I was doing logos and things like that. I was adding in, visual elements, but it was like something kept missing the mark. I would do the site and it was like, it looks nice, but it was like something was incomplete. They weren't connected to it. They'd find themselves wanting to redo it with me. Oh, I've changed this, I've changed that. What I realized was missing about branding wasn't what I thought branding was. I thought branding was these high concept visuals and all these things and logos and graphics, but what it really is that foundation that you build all your elements from. So having a clear sense of who you are, what you do, who you do it for, why you do it, that creates your messaging, which creates your website, which creates like the whole experience. And whenever I do it with branding first in that container, people are like, oh, this is like something that I feel confident about sharing. It's not just sort of a slapping a band-aid on something and shipping it out. They really feel connected to their websites that way.
Yeah, I think that one thing that people often do is they just tackle things one thing at a time instead of
Yeah.
looking at the big picture.
Yeah.
So when you do that, your messaging and your art, your graphics, all that stuff kind of it looks scattershot and it doesn't look like it's all the same person.
Yeah, it doesn't look professional, and also it creates like a decision fatigue every time you go to make a graphic because you go on these easy templates from various graphics places to go, let me make my Instagram post, let me make my something. And they give you all these free templates to choose from, which is great. But it's kind of daunting because you have to choose all these different colors, all these different things. If you know what your colors are, you don't have to keep choosing that. If you know what your font is, you don't have to keep thinking about that. It makes it a lot easier for you to actually make your content, to write your posts, to go, does this match my brand voice? Is this going to speak to my audience? That kind of thing.
How would you describe your business as far as who you help serve? Like, what do you think the main tenets of your business are?
Yeah, so really what I've come to is it's not about what the work they do, it's more about who they are and who they like to be and what process they like to go through. So I really like to work with people who like to dig deep. While I've said I can do a great website for a plumber, and I have, and that's lovely. I really like to work with people who are in some type of work that is consulting, therapy, coaching, things like that, and also just like to go deep and self-reflect on those processes themselves. That's like then the branding is it changes their whole life. They go, wow, I didn't even know. Now I'm like changing how I'm doing my whole day because I really came clear on the branding. And it's like I changed out my business model, like all of those things. They like to go deep and do like the real inquiries.
Can you give an example of somebody that you've taken from they kind of know what they're doing, but they need a lot of help, and then showing the transformation from where they were to where you helped them get to?
Yeah. I think because I think sometimes people come to me and just, I need a website or I need a logo or I need a something.
Hmm.
And then what that really is they're really not confident oftentimes about sharing what they're doing with the world. And they're just thinking they need like a fix. And I am sort of holding a container for them to get clear on everything, like, oh, wow, I thought I was going to do my business this way. But so I'm trying to think about like a specific person. Yeah, just, I mean, really, especially working with coaches, I would say mainly because they're already in that business of doing deep work. They get into a mode of comparing themselves and they go, I want to make my website look like so and so's. And through the process with me, I make the website look like them. And that's the part they were too scared, too shy to put themselves out there in a way. They think they have to look like someone else to be taken seriously or be quote unquote professional. They think they have to, oh, this person's using this font. We should use that. I'm thinking, why? That doesn't speak to your clients. That doesn't match your personality. So it's working with people again, like I say, I like bringing out the uniqueness in people. So those little giving them little permission slips to things they think they shouldn't share that are maybe an overshare, and I go, no, that's the human part of you. That's what's going to I had one client, I did a coaching website for her and we were doing her personal bio page. And the way I see an about page, for example, is that about page is it's about you, but it's why you're qualified to work with who you
Hmm.
work with. And she had a Pez collection of like these Pez dispensers, candy dispensers. And this was like this thing that she loved. So I said, great, let's put the picture there. Like it really just connects you to like the playfulness of her that wasn't coming across anywhere else in the site. And so in a way, it gave her a little bit of permission to be more of herself.
Yeah, that's interesting because a lot of people will do the copycat game, and
Yeah.
it doesn't work at all. In my opinion, I don't think
No.
I've seen
Uh-uh.
a single example of somebody that went, I want to be exactly like them, because their life story, their mission, their everything is completely different from your own. It's like if the person who comes to your site and sees that, they're like, why don't I just work with that person, Because that doesn't
Yeah,
feel like who
or
you are.
trends and things like that. Like we're shown these design trends, and I, as a designer, I'll go and see a website. I'll go, whose site does that look like? And it'll click in my head. I'm like, oh, that looks like this other person's site. Like, why did they pretty much copy that site or that look or that font or that style or something? Because they were like, oh, that market likes that. And I'm thinking, but it doesn't really give me a sense of what makes them different. Like we're looking for is someone for me, not just that you're, especially in the space of the kind of work I do. I'm not working mostly with products and things like that. I'm working more with people who do service-based businesses and one-on-one businesses, and they're working with humans. They're not just purchasing a product and checking out, and never connecting with the human on the other end. So in that sense, it is as much as you can make the site feel like you and the real you, not just some polished, pretty version. That's not how you're going to show up on Zoom. I have clients, I'm like, if you wear your glasses every time you're on Zoom with your clients, wear your glasses in your photos because that's who they're going to see. Don't show up
Yeah,
as some
even the
other
small
person that
details
had,
like that.
yeah, that had like a glamour. This one client, I had to basically give her permission to fire her stylist because she hired the stylist to do photo shoots for her website. And she goes, she put me in all these weird things. I said, what's wrong with what you already wear? When you show up to events, she's a speaker. When you show up to events, you feel great about how you look, don't you? And she's like, yeah. I go, why not wear what you wear? Who said you have to look like some other person?
Yeah, I also think it adds to your own self-confidence because when you're in, like, it feels like you're wearing a costume if you're doing it for a
Yeah.
photo shoot.
Yeah,
What do
definitely.
you think the importance of knowing yourself is before you can help other people? What do you think the importance of that
I
is?
think it's hugely important because I think it's the foundation of building your business too, not just your brand. It's when you know yourself, you know what capacity you have, you know what your values are, you know what's important to you, and then you can do work that's in alignment with those values. You can do great work doing anything, I'm sure, in what you're good at, but there's some point you're going to get really burned out if you're not doing work that's in alignment with your values. If you're not doing work that's really has like the flavor of what you specialize in. It's not just about your skills, it's about everything you bring to the table.
Yeah. What do you think is the thing about you that people enjoy the most as far as working with you?
Gosh, what they love hate is that I dig deep, because they come to me and they're all confident and they're like, I'm going to tell you all the things and here's my about copy and here's my this, and then I go, yeah, is that it? Is that really it? And I'll dig a little bit uncomfortably underneath the surface, and they'll go, you know what? I don't even want to say this on this page. Why am I saying this thing that I said 10 years ago that's not really me anymore? They think they've got it all figured out, and kind of, so it's sort of this hard thing and this gift, because then they go, my gosh, do I get to be really who I am now? And yes. And so I cheerlead that on and I go, how can we bring more of that out? How can we celebrate more of what makes you unique instead of, again, as I've mentioned, like what makes you look like everybody else? And I have one client that I was working with, and she majorly was in comparison mode. Look at this website. I had to give her an assignment, like stop looking at other websites, like, because also she was in, even though she was in the same industry, the type of stuff she did was so different than this person she was comparing herself to. And I'm like, it's apples and oranges. Like, you don't even want to be like that person in life. So I have to sometimes give people permission to sort of not do something and just lean into who they are, which is not always comfortable, but that's what actually people love about me. I make them uncomfortable. Is that it?
I mean, it could be because that's what
Yeah.
draws out. I think the most authentic version of yourself is when you go past the surface.
Yeah.
A lot of us
Yeah.
can talk about what's on the top, but going down and seeing what really matters to us is very difficult.
Yeah, I was working with someone the other day and she had created this messaging that was really bold and really powerful and bright colors and all these things. And I went, what do you wear? What does your house look like? What are you comfortable with? Like, how do you show up? And it was a very different style than how she had been sharing her graphics and her branding. And I was like, I don't know that that's you. I think that's some version you thought you were supposed to be. And it's really like flipped everything on its side for her. And she went, maybe that's why I'm not attracting the clients I want to, because I'm trying to be this other person.
Yeah. It can work if you have like a persona, let's say.
Yeah.
But in most cases, you need to align your life with your business because otherwise you're always trying to put on a facade and you're burning your energy so much faster because you're trying to pretend to be something you're not.
Yeah. And as a former dancer and performer and things like that, yeah, I could perform, I could be something else, sure. But how much better it feels to get to be me,
I
so much,
loved
so much.
yeah. The word that you use a lot is permission. I think
Hmm.
a lot of us when we go through school, we always need permission to do anything, so it's hard to break that. How do you suggest that we break out of the need to ask for permission?
Yeah. To give yourself permission. I think a confidence builds, I think over time, the more you do something, there's someone I was following on Instagram. I don't know why I can't remember her Instagram handle, but she was doing a thing about visibility. And so she was doing like a 30-day challenge just for herself, even though that's what she supports people on. She's a former actress. And she was doing this thing about like the more you show up, the easier it gets, right? The more you do something, even though it's uncomfortable at first, and it you might go through phases obviously where you're sharing something that feels extra vulnerable and scary all of a sudden. You're like, well, I'm showing up, right? I think the more you show up, the more you can start giving yourself that permission. And honestly, working with someone like me or a coach is, you sort of hear that person on your shoulder at some point, like your little, what would my coach say right now? You know what I mean? It helps you to kind of get out of your self and go, all right, that's just my ego. That's just my fear. That's just me thinking small, but like here's how other people see me. And that's why, like, in the work I do with branding, I'm like, if you don't know like some things about yourself, go ask other people. How do they see you? What do they think about you? That's actually who you really are, is how you're showing up in the world. And so let those people, let those voices be there for you to give you permission. So you can lean on sort of that to give you your confidence in a way.
Yeah, not permission related, but something I found myself. I'm trying to do solo recorded podcast episodes, and I find it
Yeah.
very difficult because I've never done it before. But I know for a fact that the more that I'm gonna do it, the better it's gonna get. So it's like you have to start somewhere in order to build up enough confidence to be able to do it regularly. You can't just give up on the first pass and be like, "Oh, this is not gonna work." You have to just continue to do the things that you want to do because that's something I think is important for.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to start somewhere. I had a conversation earlier about this, about how we don't give ourselves room to be imperfect. We think we have to do it perfectly right away. And um, I was listening to a podcast with Brene Brown during the early stage of the pandemic, and she was talking about something called FFT, which is effing first time. Like basically, like we're all going through this pandemic, and it was the first time we're all doing this. So no
Mhm.
wonder it's going to be clunky, and we're going to be unsure of how to navigate people staying at home, all these different things. And like you have to give yourself a learning curve. And so, if you want to do something, do it a bunch for free, do it sample versions with other people. Even when I was getting into web design, some of it was just like, cool, I'll give away stuff because I need something for my portfolio that's got this certain look that I want to experiment with, or this certain technique that I want to experiment with in my design. Um, and they're like, great, cool, let me do that. Right. So that it gives you sort of some room to play. So you have to kind of give yourself some space to just create and make mistakes, really.
Yeah, a lot of times we start to look at just the business side of things and we forget that we're also here to do some interesting stuff. So not everything needs to have a specific purpose, although it does help for the most part, but you do need to build out that space for yourself to experiment and continue to create and exercise your creative muscles.
Definitely.
What are some
Yeah, it
of the
doesn't I
things that
mean,
you
we
do?
capitalism, we think it's always money, right? We like, if, don't do this unless, and then when as I mentioned my jewelry business earlier, when I was making jewelry, and there's some things that I think shouldn't be monetized, right? Like as I started selling it and getting more into the marketing, I went, this is no longer fun. And so some things aren't fun if you do them for money, and other things are, wow, this is fun and I love making money at this. So sometimes just do things even if they feel good for no reason.
Yeah, not everything needs to be sold. Some things are just,
Not
one
everything
is like
needs to be
practice,
sold.
and two, it's like it builds a different muscle in what you're doing, which could help you in other ways. You never
Yes.
know what is going to help you in the future. What
Definitely.
are some things outside of your web design and branding stuff that bring you joy and that you do creatively?
Well, that I do creatively. Well, writing, I mean, 100%. It's kind of bundled into branding, but I found myself, I was not writing. I went to school to be a writer. I've always loved writing. And again, as I mentioned, I found like oh, it has to be a blog. It has to be a monetized thing. It has to be content. I have to always be writing something that's getting published. And I wasn't writing enough. So first of all, I started reading more because I wasn't feeling like I was reading enough. Reading always gets me to writing. I was reading a lot of memoirs and thinking, yeah, I actually love to write that way. I love to write like a memoir. My goal is to write a memoir at some point. It was funny about writing memoirs. You're like, is the story ever over enough for me to actually write the memoir, or am I still in the story? You have to be enough like beyond the story to write about it, I think. But yeah, like just pursuing writing. I have a Monday morning writing group, and I started that with the intention of I need to get writing and I need support. So I'm going to have other people come write with me. Oftentimes it turns into newsletter, but a lot of times I'm surprised at what I create out of just the practice of writing. I start writing and then all these ideas start coming like from left field. Like what is that idea that just showed up? Like I didn't know that idea was there till I started writing. So it makes me realize that it is my mechanism to create in a way. It's my brainstorming tool.
Yeah, I started joining your writing calls probably like a month or so ago, and there's some very, very interesting prompts. How are the ways that you develop some of these ideas? Do you pick them up from life, or do you seek them out?
They Honestly, they usually come right before the writing session. I'll either notice a theme in the work I'm doing with my clients, like something my clients are challenged by for the week, something that's in the news, something topical, but I try to keep it sort of beyond that. Let's say like something difficult is going on in the news, and I'll lean the post will be something about like during difficult times, what can you do for yourself to take care of yourself? I won't make it so completely. It's sort of
Hmm.
evergreen that way, I guess, if you will. It can be universal. I really like to dig deep in those because I think, again, like I mentioned with branding, like the deeper you dig, then the bigger the question is, the more to ponder. So they're meant to be kind of ponderables. They're meant to be questions that are difficult to answer. They're meant to be, whoa, I didn't want to be asked that question, right? They're meant to be a little push people's comfort zones a little bit. But yeah, they just come to me.
Where
I don't
when
know.
did you? That's often how the best ideas happen, right? Where they just come to us on a whim, or they've been sitting in our minds for a long time, and that they pop
Yeah.
out at the right moment because you're intentional about finding them, I think.
Yeah, I'll write a list of ideas. Oh, here's going to be the writing prompts, and I'll have this list of ideas. But then when I get to the call right before the call, I'm like, nope, this is more important right now. And so far, it seems to be working, that technique.
When did you start this group, and how has it evolved since
When did
you
I
started
start?
it?
It's only been a few months. How it's evolved is really when I'm talking to people on networking calls, anything like that. I'm sharing that I do websites, and they're like, that's great. But I keep sharing the link to the writing, and that's what people keep really being interested in. I'm finding more and more people. I meet a lot of new people. I am extroverted, but I'm also doing a lot of networking and messaging people on Instagram and things like that, and having conversations. Really bring it back full circle to people I've known for a long time that haven't known me necessarily in this way. They knew I've written blogs and shared blogs that I've written and published and things like that. But this is more inviting people to write with me, so that's a different space to hold. I've also known I've managed communities and volunteers and things like that in my past as well, and so some people know me that way, and so it's like, of course, this is a natural thing. You're going to lead a writing session. But so to bring new people into that, it's been very cool to let the group kind of shape it and to kind of ask questions of people and say, hey, I'm doing this new thing. What do you need in there? Does this help you? What would help? I have, because there's a writing prompt, there's a brain dump session where you just kind of journal out everything just to get going. And then there's a playlist that I have every week that I change. That's really fun for me to do too, because I feel like I'm playing DJ eventually. My goal is to like learn some DJ techniques so I can actually like DJ a whole session with certain beats and all these things. That's the goal of mine. But yeah, it's been cool to see how it evolves in my own self. Like I feel different about it every week that I do it. Like we were talking about, the more you do something, it's not that I feel more confident, because sometimes I feel really freaked out to do it, but I'm doing it anyway. And then once I get on there with people and then just connect with people and be present with people, everything feels okay.
Yeah, I think well, the way that humans evolved, we're taught to fear things that are uncomfortable. So the only way to break from that is to just consistently show up and it's a safe space, obviously, because you're the one that created it.
Yeah, it's and I want to make it a safe space for people coming forward. Even as I go, I've been in a lot of kind of really through the pandemic. I've been in a lot of different groups, but I've been in a lot of groups that were primarily women, and I did not want that group to be this. I wanted it to be all genders, and so I am attracting that. Those are the kind of clients I work with as well. I really wanted it to feel like a welcoming, inclusive community where a lot of people could belong. So even if I'm leaning into something that's topical or political, I still try to keep it neutral. As long as people are happy or comfortable with including people, then they can be in the group, right? But yeah, it's been really cool to see it evolve because I mean, I'm a person that lives with anxiety. I have PTSD, and so doing uncomfortable things, there's some things that seem easy for people that are uncomfortable for me, and so I also have a lot of compassion for that it's not easy for everyone, that it is hard to be vulnerable, it is hard to share yourself.
Yeah, I think that's why it's always important to have empathy for everyone. You have no idea what other people have gone through or are
Exactly.
going through right now, and
Yeah.
just having that space where people can trust each other and not judge each other for whatever reason.
Yeah, a more human space too, because again, what I've found from showing up in a lot of networking groups online recently, some of them are great, but some of them you feel like you have to be so polished and people are apologizing. Oh, I have a sweatshirt on. I'm sorry, I don't have my suit. I'm thinking we're wearing a suit to networking calls. Like again, I didn't come from the corporate environment, so I don't even have that context. As a designer, I can get away with a lot. People are like, "Oh, it's my cool, quirky designer that has a shaved head and wears a hoodie." Like, that's kind of part of the brand in a way, but it's nice to like give people a space where they can like exhale and just be themselves.
Yeah. One of the interesting things about the group was that we met through a different group that we were been part of for a very long time, and
I
we
know.
were both. I think it was like 2015 or 16, something along those lines.
Yeah, I joined in
We joined.
2019. You've been in there longer than me for sure.
Okay, and then we just now connected this year, which is interesting. So it's like
And
always
it's a
leaving
lot of
yourself
people.
up.
So it's amazing that somehow we connect because I think I posted about it that I was starting this community. I thought, well, this is a good place to post. There's like hundreds of people here. And I'll just post this thing I'm doing, and you just happen to see it at that time. There was a little bit of a magic about it, and then it's kind of getting peppered in. I'm having same people that have been in the community a long time are messaging me. It's really interesting that I had connected with early too in being a part of the community. So
Can you talk about some of the other things that you tried? I know you said you've tried a lot of different things, and this is the first one that's actually started
yeah,
to feel like your purpose for now, at
yeah.
least.
I've okay, so a couple, in the recent several years. My husband and I lived in a travel trailer full time for 5 years. And I think we left 2016, we left Los Angeles. We had lived in Los Angeles for years. And again, I built my business to be fully mobile and I wasn't living that way. And so I wanted to experiment with what that would be like. We knew we wanted to leave Los Angeles, weren't sure where we wanted to go. So we thought we're going to explore places around mostly the West Coast of the United States to see where we might want to live. That was kind of part of the adventure. And then, go in these little small towns along the way that you wouldn't discover when you're flying somewhere. You only go to the big city that has the attraction. You don't discover these little gems of places that you stay for like one day that are really interesting. So I did that for 5 years and we were blogging about that and we were going to do more with that. And we kind of just decided we'd rather just be in the adventure and not really be telling people about the adventure, not really be trying to help people live in an RV or, any of those kinds of things. It just became our life. And before we did the travels, I got into minimalism. I used to be a professional organizer. So, again, one of my many pivots in my life. And, so got into minimalism really in early, probably like 2006. I started getting into minimalism, and that kind of just naturally led into living in a travel trailer because it's a small space. You can't have much stuff. So my husband and I spoke on minimalism. I was writing about it. I was doing blogs on it, and doing guest blogs and podcasts and things like that. And I tried to like develop courses. I tried to develop trainings. I tried to do coaching, like all these things that just somehow wasn't quite hitting. And I was even butting up against a lot of people who felt a lot of shame around their stuff. And also the minimalism was a very kind of at the time like white male dominated space. It's shifting, which is good to see. But I think there was a little bit of this dogmatic thing of you can't have any stuff. And that's not what I was about at all. But there was such a misconception that it just wasn't hitting. Like no matter what I would try to do, and I kept going, maybe this is because it's not really what this might be my life and something that's important to me and my values, but not necessarily what I'm meant to do as a profession, right? And so I kind of let go of that. And so, yeah, and then just building various courses. I've tried, through the community that we're in, we have a course platform that we can build courses in. And so I went, great, now that I have this course platform, I'm just going to try and build all these different courses. And same thing, it just, nothing quite would hit. And I would do this work to build it and I'd get all excited and I'd go, nobody really wants this. This is weird. And so then suddenly, like, just the writing thing was that I knew I wanted to start building a community. That's really what it came to. And someone had told me about a year ago I was really burnt out in my web design work. I was booked and busy, but it felt like I was still like scraping for work all the time. And so I was like, I would be so busy that I couldn't market, and then I would have that feast or famine cycle. And I went, something needs to shift in here, and I'm not sure how it's going to get there. And I had said I wanted to build a community, and a good friend of mine was like, well, you don't have capacity. Why would you build a community? And there was something in my brain that was like, yeah, but this is what I feel like I want to go toward for some reason, because just intrigues me. And so at one point, she also said something like, what's going to feed you? What's going to, not literally, like even maybe literally putting food on your table, but what's going to feed your soul? Like what's going to feel like it gives you energy to do. And that's why I started the writing group, because I thought I need to write. It feels great to be on there. I always feel more inspired when I'm done with it. And if I can do more of that for other people, that's what started. I think that's what made the thing the right thing, is that it wasn't just like, oh, I'm good at something, let me sell something doing that. It was like, what's actually going to really give me energy? What's going to get me up in the morning? What's going to excite me?
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that we need to find in what we do. If it
Yeah.
doesn't make you want to do it, it's like it feels like a chore at that point. So it's finding the balance between what makes you feel a lot of energy, a lot of positive energy towards it, and also something
Hmm.
that other people also connect with, because you
Yeah.
can have one or the other, but I think you need both of those for it to sustain over the long run.
Yeah, because as an entrepreneur, I mean, there's so many great things in it. And there's so many challenges in it, right? There's, um, you having to market yourself, you having to make connections, you having to get the work, all the things, you having to either hire people to do things or learn how to do things yourself that you're not necessarily good at. So it's its own sort of self-help journey, really. And it takes a thick skin at times when things aren't working out or going well, because you're like, I feel really good about my work, but how come I don't have the money I want? Or how come, and so just, yeah, that constantly having to pivot and look at, okay, what would feel good for me? How would it feel good to spend my time that I'm also making money, right? Because we can do things we're good at and then we just get burnt out. Like if you do a lot of what you're good at, sometimes it can just burn you out. And so you have to find, what's the way that I can do what I'm good at? What are the things I don't necessarily want to do that I can either hire out or find a simpler way to do?
Do you do, um, I guess, do you work on your business by yourself, solopreneur style, or do you have like a
I do. I
team, or do
don't
you
hire.
have
I don't.
outside?
I mean, I say that, but I don't think anybody ever really works alone. I have so many people that I'm connected to that, I trade things with people. I'll do a session for someone. They'll do, a little bit of strategy stuff for me. I have worked with coaches, which has been really effective as well. I had a business coach for a period of time. I'm doing Tracy Stanger's Sort, Purge, and Organize course right now, which is, she's a good friend, and I also purchased her course. It's like a membership program essentially, but you're really paying for the courses and then like one session per month with a group, and that's been really helpful to move me through some of the things that I don't like doing about my business, like time management and productivity and things like that. It's getting me real clear on that. So it kind of just when I work with people or get support, it's like, what can't I do myself? What's a gap that it's like keeps sticking me? And is there someone I know that can do that? Can I pay them? Or, can I trade with them? Or do they have something free? Or, how does this work? And so I think just looking at like what is, yes, I don't hire a staff, let's put it that way. I don't have people that are working subcontracting or anything like that for me. It's all just me.
Yeah. I think a lot of people are hesitant to let go of control of every aspect, but
Yeah.
at a certain point, we need the help of others, or else, like you said, we're gonna burn out and figure out that doing everything yourself is not such a great idea. It's good to have
Yeah.
an idea of what you want, but doing it all yourself, like every tedious task, just really adds up over time.
Yeah, I mean, I had done, or obviously early in the web design business, I was sort of doing VA stuff too. So I was doing more kind of admin tasks on top of the websites. And, there's a lot of things that I went, I don't really like to do any of this email marketing back end stuff, all this. I don't like to do any of that. And so I like, in a way, stopped doing it for myself for years because I hated doing it so
Hmm.
much. And then I went, well, but I have to build my business a particular way. So let me get into it and let me see how it feels. And, finding tools that work for me, getting into it, I am. But then I know there's gaps of, okay, if I want to take my business to this level, I'll probably need to have someone who's really skilled in this that can do it faster than me. So it doesn't waste my time doing it. So yeah, I'm not opposed to hiring people by any means. But right now I like to keep my business pretty simple. There's people like there was someone I saw that had a branding agency and it was like, they're like, this is how much, I made a $50,000 month, but like they spent $25,000 that month, which again, that's still a lot. That's a lot of money. But I'm like, to manage $25,000 of spending sounds exhausting to me. Like, how many people are you managing? How much stress? You're worried about paying their mortgages, like all that kind of stuff. I went, I don't think I want to, I don't want, I'm not at that level. I don't know that I'll be at that level just to make $50,000 a month. Like if that's the only goal, you have to have a lot of overhead. You have to have a lot of people management, things like that. And if that's not how you want to live your life, then don't aim for $50,000 a month.
Yeah, I think we could be attracted by the thought of having that much money, but also have to think about all the work and all the time, and oftentimes that doesn't leave yourself with the ability to actually do the things you want to do. Because do you
Hmm.
want to be working all the time, or do you want to build a life that you want to live? I think.
Yeah, what are you gonna do with that $50,000 a month? Have a, heart attack because you're so stressed out? Like I mean, it's like, yeah, what kind of life do you want to live? So same with like all the branding work I do, the websites, everything, it really is based around what are your values? What do you want your life to look like? Because people will come to me and they'll go, okay, so I need a course and I need a this and I need a that and I need all these things. I'm like, do you really need all those things on your website? Like, you might not, because I'm like, if you do a course, this is what it takes. If you do a membership community, this is what it takes. And they're like, ooh, I don't really have time to do that. I have a kid and I coach the soccer team and whatever. And I'm like, yeah, no, that's not going to work, you know?
Yeah, it's
So let's find
I
a better
think.
way. Let's find a way to make your offers, juicier so that you can charge what you need to for the work that you do so you can have the life that you want to have.
That's one idea that I think is worth the discussion is charging what you're worth. I think is a
Oh,
very difficult thing,
so
especially
difficult.
in the very beginning. Can you talk about how you kind of work
My
through
God.
being able to say I'm worth this much?
Every day I'm still in the struggle. I think having I have a client who's a money coach. She's fantastic. She has like a kind of a workshop she does periodically, and just working through some of those like limiting beliefs about money. First of all, when I mentioned when I was a dancer, I mean, granted it was a long time ago, but I made like half of a salary because they hired two of us, but they're like, we'll hire you at half salary, which was like, what even is that? And so I got trained at an early age. I mean, that was my first job. I was 18. I got trained that like, you're lucky to be getting paid at all, kind of thing. And so I've
Hmm.
always had that mentality and really had to push past that. And even now, just the other day, I went, okay, when I worked with this business coach in 2019, she had me do my rates chart and whatever. I had not raised my rates since then. And it's 5 years
Oh wow.
later, and the economy is very different. I'm like, why have I not raised my rates? And so I have some clients still that I've had for like 10 years or something. And they'll want some work done here and there. And they're like, what's your rate? And they're like, oh, I don't know if I can pay that. I'm thinking, why am I even trying to work with them then? Because there's people that can pay me my existing rate, and I think that is there's like a it's uncomfortable for me to charge what I'm worth. There is very much a like that thinking of, oh, but it's easy for me to do, so why should I have to charge that much? And there's some, that logic of like, but the 10,000 hours or whatever that it took me to learn to do this thing that fast is what they're paying me for. They're not just paying me for those 10 minutes, right? They're paying you for all the training and all the experience that went into being able to know what you're doing, right? Because they're hiring me because I can get it done efficiently versus them trying to learn it, which takes 20 hours, 30 hours, something like that. And they still don't really know what they're doing, or don't want to do it. So
Yeah,
it's
there's
hard. It's something I struggle with often. I'm constantly undercharging. I'm trying to push that envelope. Talking to business coaches is really a good way to do it. I know inside the community that we're in, there's kind of some strategies around that, finding your enough number, like what you need to make, and then you know, to live comfortably, to pay your bills, but then also like to achieve your future goals. What do you need to make? And at some point you have to charge more. It's hard.
a story. I don't remember who the artist is, but there's a story of an artist who's like a famous artist that's doing some sort of art in the park or something, and then somebody comes up to him and asks for a painting or something, and he does it real quick, and he's like $2 or something, like really expensive, and the other person is like, it's that much? It only took you like 3 seconds to make that. And the artist goes, no, it took me a lifetime to learn how to do that, and that's what you're charged for. So it's like
Hmm.
being able to know that you put in the work, you put in the effort, you have the expertise to be able to charge that much, and being confident about that. And I know that takes a lot of like mindset work, because that's probably the biggest thing that we have preventing us from.
Yeah. Yeah. It is mostly mindset work because I'll have people go, well, I tried to go on Fiverr and do this and do that. And then this person, they're only this much. But then I tried to work with them and they like don't get me at all. And so part of what people are paying for with me is that I'm doing the deep work. I'm like coaching them through the process, helping them stay accountable. It's more than just designing a website. That's the thing I get the most, kind of tying back to your earlier question too. The thing I get the most when I'm working people is you're so much more than just a web designer, right? I'm like a amateur therapist. I'm a coach. I'm all these things. I'm really supporting the vulnerable. It's vulnerable to put yourself out there on a website. People get really scared about sharing themselves and what they do, and I am holding like space for them to feel confident enough to put themselves out there. And so that's part of what they're paying me for. It's not just the technical skills, right?
Yeah, that I did like that portion. I just was taking a quick look before this on your about section, and it said that you're both all these things, like a
Hmm.
therapist or this person. And I think all of those elements make you stand out, which is what this is all about, trying to figure out how people can stand out. And I think every element of you that separates you from other website designers is going to help attract the right type of people to you.
Yeah, because sometimes I'll go, there's a better developer. There's definitely a better graphic designer than me. There's a better developer than me. All these things. But I'm like, but I'm good at the whole package. Like I give them a total experience instead of just, oh, it's a nice website, but I didn't really get to be involved in the process, or I don't really feel like that looks like me, but it looks good. Like I've taken a lot of times from clients, they come to me and they're like bummed out because like 5 years ago, I paid a bunch of money for this website and I never really liked it. And the developer never got back to me and they never would let me make edits. They never taught me how to do anything to it, all this stuff. Right. And so I deal with people when they're in that like regret place of, so I haven't been sharing my website because it doesn't look like me and I don't know how to update it because they didn't tell me and all these things. And I'm like, so I have to kind of put them at ease and go, let's like start fresh. Let's figure out how to like get to the starting point that feels good and build from there instead of just reacting to this frustration about. So oftentimes people come to me with all that. And so I have to do like some emotional work and babysitting and things like that to like work them through it.
That's really interesting, because most web designers don't do that. They'll just like, oh, what do you
I
want?
know.
And just give me an idea of what you're looking for, and I'll kind of do it. But since you're doing all of this work, I think it is important for you to know that you're worth whatever it is, especially since you haven't upped your rates since 2019. So it's
Yeah, I know. It's funny that I
realizing,
just thought that the other day. I'm like, what? Why have I not? Like, what? Because I think it was already an uncomfortable edge for me at that point or something. When I was working with the business coach, I was like, oh, that's a little uncomfortable for me. And she was like, good, and I thought, oh, that's so interesting. And then it's easy too, I think, to get into the trap of when you don't just have a service that's this is exactly how much it is every time. Like the community, when going to sell this membership community, will be the same rate all the time, right? Or I'm selling a course, it will be the same rate all the time. But as I'm selling a design service, like it's customized to what they need. So sometimes they need a more developed site, sometimes they only need 2 pages. It kind of depends on what their needs are. And so when I'm quoting them, it's like I'm wanting to make sure they work with me. So I'll notice myself going, I just charge less because I'm trying to get them to work with me rather than confidently saying how much I charge. It's a very tricky game, and I'm very aware of where I am in my own mindset about it. So I'm constantly working on that.
yeah, as long as you know that this is something you're trying to work on, and
Yeah.
you could just keep it the same if you want to. I mean, that's a choice that you can make for yourself
Yeah.
too.
Well, yeah, at a certain point, because you go, wait a minute, I'm not going to be able to make the money that I need to make because if, there's only so many hours in a day with the kind of work I do, it's going to get filled. So,
Yes, so just being aware of just every aspect of your business is also something as a solopreneur
yeah.
you
And
have to
building a community,
kind of
like I
work on.
mentioned, so many people I feel like have communities because I feel like that is a direction that people want to go is we need more connection, especially with the pandemic. I think that's what we learned. We learned we can be online with people all over the world. And that's how I've done my business I was already doing my business that way before the pandemic. So it was like I already operated that way. But it's hard to go. I actually, someone else's community I almost signed up for. One of the selling points was she's like, I've made it so the pricing so that you can join other communities, which I thought that's interesting, right? Like leaning into, and then you start going, if these people I know are doing communities, nobody's going to want to pay for my community. It gets really confusing. It's a real mind bender on like how much do you charge or the value you're offering. I was in one community and they were like charging like $20 a month, and I thought that we get so much value out of this community. Why is it $20 a month? But they like for them they wanted to make it accessible. They wanted a lot of people and they wanted to make it accessible, right? So you have to kind of choose. Do you want less people and more value, more stuff included in that community, or what is the game there?
Yeah, so I think when you're figuring this out for yourself, you have to think about what are the different tiers that you could potentially
Hmm.
work it with, who are the people you need to, or you want to attract to this, and
Yeah,
like figure out and balance some of the ideas that you have. And it's difficult work because there are so many options that you can do.
it is. And there's so, people say things like when you're going to charge, it's like, well, there's people who can pay to work with you. And I always have to remind myself that I have a friend who's a coach and we had a conversation about it that she's like, people have money. There's people out there that have money. I'm like, yeah, I worked with someone who paid like $50,000 a year for their life coach. And I'm like, they have money if they're doing that, right? So it's like there are people with money. You want to work with the people that have the money. It's easy to get into like, but I want to help all these people and I'll help with them even if they don't have the money. And it's like, yeah, yes. And so I think it's good to I have one client who wrote a book like as sort of an option. It's like a book slash workbook. She's a coach. And it was like she wanted to have an affordable option for people that couldn't work with her. And so it's, 14.99 book or whatever. And I'm like, that's great because it's standalone value. It's not like a selling tool to now sign up to work with me. It's like this is its own thing that's more affordable. So I think it's good to have equitable options in the work that you do too. Like I have a course that's kind of my lower price point thing, and it's completely people can get value out of it just in doing that, or they can do a whole big package with me.
Yeah, so if you're open to that, always having tiers is something
Hmm.
that you
Yeah.
have an option to do, especially when you're doing client facing work. You can
Yeah.
do the do it yourself method where you just offer them something to download. You can do semi customized, like you said, you did 1 or 2 pages per site, or you can do the full branding experience, which is where you would dive deep, I think is probably where
Yeah, and I
people
I
get the
just
biggest
learned
impact.
something.
Yeah.
I learned something the other day, like in my full, I call it, I just started calling this, but a website program where they're basically doing, it's like a 3 month. So instead of the get it done in a weekend or whatever, all that stuff, that never works with the people that I work with, especially because we're digging deep. I'm not like, come to the table with all your content and your pictures and everything, and here's your 2 weeks, I'm going to work on your website. It's like, we're figuring it out together. I'm supporting them through the process. They're going, does this thing I did in 5 years ago relate to the website? Should I get more pictures? What should I do? Like, we're going through that process together. And that's about a 3 month process. And just learning, yeah, what you're charging for that is different because you're giving them a more hands-on experience. And also, I'm not going to make them do homework. I'm going to do it with them, because a lot of times, like, that's what happens. I'll be well, this is like a common designer complaint, is like, you're waiting for people to give you things, so that you can go do your work. You're waiting for photos, you're waiting for content, you're waiting for whatever. And I'm like, let's do it all together in a process, so that I'm sort of holding you accountable, holding your hand through the process, helping you get it done.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the ways that you probably make yourself stand out, just because that's what people are often looking for. If they're willing
Mhm.
to pay for it, they're like, okay, I need you to just help me throughout my business, which is where the branding comes in. It's not just a
Yeah.
website, it's a whole,
Yeah. It's not
it's,
just a
it's
website. That should
everything.
be their tagline. It's not just a website. Yeah. Yep.
Cool. I have a few more questions for you.
Okay.
Do you know anyone personally who also runs a standout creative business? And what do they do and how do they stand out?
Standout creative business. Yeah, I mean, I know some copywriters and design and graphic designers and things like that. Kind of similar to the work I do. They're really in that being unique. I think that's always what I'm looking for in other people that I connect with and am inspired by. I see that in myself and I see that in them. Yeah, just giving people more permission to like do it their way, I think, if you will, instead of industry standard or best practice or any of those kinds of things. I find those kinds of businesses much more inspiring, that they're really, working with all personality types, working with all kinds of businesses. I think that's just what is inspiring for me to see.
What is one extraordinary book, podcast, documentary, or something along those lines that has had the biggest impact on you in your journey?
One extraordinary book, podcast. Well, it's interesting because yeah, I think that I go back to the minimalism, interestingly, because I can't even think of his name right now. Chris Gillibo, I think is his name. He did a website called No Sidebar. I don't know if it still exists, but nosidebar.com was the website. And he was a WordPress developer and basically was about doing like minimalist websites. And he was a minimalist, and was the no sidebar is essentially taking the sidebar off of a WordPress website. So there's that sidebar on a blog roll that has all the data. And it was like keeping it clean, simple, keeping the design experience simple. That like really inspired, before I was even doing websites, that kind of inspired my vision around creating simple spaces and designing things with a very clean visual focus and things like that. And then just that he started writing about minimalism, I think got me really inspired into that as well. So yeah, no sidebar.
We'll see if that still exists later.
I was gonna say, right?
What do you think it is that makes a creative business stand out? And one piece of advice that you give to someone based on your own experience to help them do that.
What makes a creative business stand out? I think personality. Really, I have to say, the things that you think are too personal to share are probably the things that people want to hear, because it makes them feel more human, rather than you're the expert on a soapbox kind of preaching to them. It makes them feel included. So be human. What was the second
If
question?
it's too hard. uh, Hold on. What will help make someone stand out? I guess it's just along the similar lines where
Yeah, what will
you would
help?
use your
Yeah, what will help make
personality.
someone stand out is, and it really is. It's like the quirkiness, the thing you think that's like, oh, that's not cool, I don't want to share that. Like, that's the stuff you should be sharing, because that's the stuff that brings out your humanity, that makes other people be open and vulnerable around you, which makes for a richer experience. Like, you have to give people permission by doing it yourself.
Yeah. I think that's something that we should all aspire to. I know I probably don't do it myself enough, is just like bringing out other aspects of me that are kind of interesting other
Mhm.
than, trying to help people with marketing. It's like, what other aspects and how can you use that to help people see things in a different light?
Yeah, in my branding course and in the work I do with my clients, I say, "What makes you unique?" And I have so many people, and they're like, "I'm not unique. Like I'm boring." And like, let's chat then. And I'll ask them like more questions, and then they'll go, "Well, when I was a kid, I did." And like, you're completely unique. What are you talking about? Like, there's these things we don't even know because it's same with the whole being good at something, right? You're just good at it, so you don't even think it's like an asset. And other people go, "But that's easy for you. That's an asset, right?" So I think it's that, owning those things about yourself that are the real skills you have. And that does come, I mean, I'm not young, but I'm youngish. I'm always young at heart, but I think that does come with age a little bit to go, oh, what's a common theme of like throughout my life? What do I find myself doing all the time? When you're going into business for yourself, what do you keep gravitating toward in every job that you do? I can't help but like make spaces better. That's a big part of what I do. So then it's like I'm making your web space better. At any like retail job, I'd always be like, let me make the storeroom more organized, let me make it better workflow for people, let me make a better sort of user experience, if you will. Like that all leaned into websites, so I think that's your uniqueness too.
Yeah. So the thing that I think is we're too familiar with ourselves to realize what it is about us that's interesting. So that's sometimes when you go out and ask other people what it is about me that you think makes me unique, where you'll find
Yeah.
like
And like,
a lot
Chat
of cool
GPT,
answers.
yeah, you had me ask Chat GPT and I went, well, this is kind of weird because it's giving me things that I didn't even see about myself that I had probably written about myself or had been put out somewhere or something like that in a blog or something like that. It compiled all the data in this way that was, a little off, but it was like, oh wow, this is kind of hitting spot on. So ask other people, whether it's, please ask a real person, not just Chat
I
GPT.
mean, also ask ChatGPT.
Also
It
ask
probably knows you better than
ChatGPT.
anybody else.
Right. That's what I thought to say. ChatGPT, if you were my client, what would you say about me? Because it's probably going to go onto my testimonials on my website and pull things that other people have said about me. One client said I was the unicorn of website design, like whatever that meant, to her, because it was like, again, it's more than a website. She just thought she was going to get a website designer. She didn't know I was going to really see her and help bring things out in her business that she didn't even know needed to be brought out.
Can you give the listeners a challenge that they can take action on right now to help them start standing out?
Ooh, a challenge they can take right now. Know yourself. Same thing we were talking about. If you want to stand out, go back to who you are and what's important to you and your values instead of thinking you have to create some new way to put it out there. Really dig deep into what's important to you and then share from there.
Yeah. It's the easiest to be ourselves and not someone else because
Yeah,
that's what
trying to
we're
be
most familiar
marketable
with.
is not going to work. Trying to be marketable is going to wear you out.
Well, Bridget, it's been really amazing talking to you. Can you give the listeners your information on where to find you and keep
Yes.
up to date with more of your stuff?
Yeah, so my website is bridgetbakerbranding.com, and Instagram is probably the best place to hang out with me. Instagram.com/Bridget Baker Branding.
Very cool. Well, thanks for coming on, and hopefully some people will learn how to brand themselves a little bit better.
Awesome.
All right, bye. Bridget Baker reminds us that your quirks and unique story aren't just part of your brand, they are your brand. Embracing your authenticity isn't just liberating, it's the key to creating connections that are magnetic, meaningful, and unforgettable. If you're ready to turn your story into your superpower, visit thestandoutcreatives.com. Whether you're launching your next book, product, or need help with your marketing, I'd love to work with you to craft a brand that's authentic, bold, and unapologetically you. Spots are limited, so if you're ready to stop blending in and start standing out, don't wait. Sign up today.